welcome back. This is For Such a Time as This. I'm Madeline.
I'm Rachel.
And today we're going to be talking about friendships, and we decided to title this video Love Each Other. And this topic about friendships is really good. Last week we talked about, deepening your relationship with God and having a firm foundation. And then the week before that, we talked about identity in Christ. So every week it's going off of each other. It's just building up and up and up. So this video on friendships is really good, but if you don't know your identity in Christ and you don't know how to deepen your relationship with God, it's going to be hard to talk about and get involved in having a friendship, including a Christian friendship or community that is involved in the Christian community. So we just want to leave you guys with that. And should we just jump right into the verses?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So today's verse is John 15, 11 through 17. And it goes, I have told you this so that you will have the same joy that I have. I also want your joy to be complete. Here is my command. Love one another just as I have loved you. No one has greater love than the one who gives their life for their friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I do not call you slaves anymore. Slaves do not know what their master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. I have told you everything I learned from my Father. You did not choose me. Instead, I chose you. I appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last. I also appointed you so that the Father will give you what you ask for. He will give you whatever you ask for in my name. Here is my command. Love one another.
Love that.
Yeah.
In my version, it says, this is my command, love each other.
I
and
love
so
it.
that's why
Yeah.
the verse and the topic, it fits so well.
Yeah. Do you want to touch and explain a little bit?
Yeah, so we actually talked about this verse at the end of Firm Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really plan it, but it just kind of worked out in the way. I remember we were talking about having that firm foundation with God is knowing what Jesus did for us,
Mm-hmm.
and He calls us His friends, and we have a friendship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this verse is talking about. And then at the very end of it, it's just saying how He commands us to love each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about quickly Matthew 22. I'm going to flip to that. Matthew 22, 37 through 39. It goes with this main verse.
Mm-hmm.
God gives us two greatest commands. Basically, He says, the first one is to love the Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. And then the second verse is you should love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, going back to John 15, it's just showing how He wants us to not only love Him, but love each other.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's what.
And I think it's so beautiful because I think in that aspect of it, when you really dive deep into it, it takes away the whole religion aspect of it. And it really just creates a whole bond between the two of you. So I think it's just such a beautiful thing once you really know who He is. Mm-hmm. It becomes a real love. It becomes a real friendship.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why it's so important for us, for you guys, to go back and watch our last two episodes. Mm-hmm. Because when you know your identity in Christ, you know who you are. And then if you know how to have a relationship with God, because that is also a friendship, it can be, then you can now pour into your friends.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that today, about how you have to pour from an empty cup, a full cup and not an empty cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a few points today that we want to go over. We want to really talk about how to have community with friends, because friendships are everywhere. We all have friends. We all have people that we turn to. We all have people that we care about. And as a Christian, we can do things very similarly, I can't say the word.
Yeah.
But we can also do things differently as well. And those differences make a huge impact on our friendships, I think. So the first thing that we kind of want to talk about is how to be there for your friend in the way God says we should.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first off, we're going to be starting about the do's and the don'ts of the friendship type just to go off of that little vibe. And I have like the perfect verse for this, which is Proverbs 13:20, which is, walk with wise people and become wise. A companion of foolish people suffers harm, which basically means, and I'm sure most people have heard this, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Biblical, you know? So I think that's so like amazing because it's true. It's really, who are you walking with? Who are you spending? We talk about this all the time. What are you doing with your time? Who are you spending your time with? Because show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And are you spending time with people that are pushing you to love each other? Are you spending time with people who are going down a difficult, wrong path? Who are you spending your time with? And yes, there's a fine line, of course, because Jesus hangs around sinners, but really, boundaries is a huge thing, and I think we talked about that a few times, because really, where are you going? Are you spending time with people who are pushing you to be healthy and active and lively and more like Jesus, or are you spending your time with people that are, again, leading you down a difficult path? So I think that's really
it's good.
Strong starting point with this.
Yes,
I think it just really dives into everything and kind of gives you like, I watched this video one time where it was like, who do you have in your inner circle? And really just, who are you taking out of your inner circle? Who's getting all of your time? Because it's,
who are you going to for advice?
Who are you going to for advice is huge too. Like, who are you turning to? Is it biblical advice or is it worldly advice?
Those are two different things.
Two different things. Two totally different things. So, views of that, of who you should be spending your time with, it's people that are pushing you closer to God. People that are bringing your attention and your focus back onto God. To be like, okay, so this isn't really what is biblical, so let's turn it and ask Jesus for advice. My whole thing this season is really, instead of going to friends for advice, I'm praying now before I go to anybody. And I'm like, and that is so difficult because half the time I'm just like, no, I don't even want to go to God right now. I just want to vent. I just want somebody to be on my side, and that's not always what it's about. So, and that's a huge thing that I had to learn, because I'm like, you don't need validation from a friend. You need to just go to vent to God. And honestly, half the time I'm like, did you even see? Like, did you see what just happened? And he's like, I will take care of it. You do not have to take care of it. You don't have to open your mouth. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to make that face, because I make that face. So I'm like, my face is too loud sometimes. But you don't have to do that. And God is your best friend, and he will take care of it. And literally, when he says pray about everything, he means everything. And I'm learning that this season. So
that's a big shout out for Firm Foundation. Last episode.
Yeah, exactly. So if you haven't seen that one, go watch it.
Definitely.
But so I think that's like a huge do, is who you're spending your time with. Make sure it's people that are giving you biblically advice. And if you need to vent to somebody, like other than God, make sure that you're venting to someone who is in your community, who is going to church. That is huge. And of course, like I said before, worldly friends, yes, you can definitely have them. It's just also having boundaries of who is speaking into you. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's one of the huge first do's.
I have a don't. I can go off of.
Perfect. Let's hear it.
So for me, these are my struggles. These don'ts have been really hitting me lately in the terms of just like, I've been struggling with this, guys. Like, I struggle with friendships. I do. I have great friends, but my inner self struggles with understanding friendships and understanding what it means. But with God, He's been making it more clear, and He's been, by His grace and by friends and everything, I've been able to understand better. So one of the don'ts I would say is pointing out what is wrong in your friends, because we all have, we all have things. We all have things that we struggle with. We all have, flaws. But God tells us that we're not called to judge. He's the ultimate judge, and He will judge one day. But for now, we are not called to judge. We're not called. We're not called to do that. And I have a great verse that I just love this one. So this is The whole chapter in Matthew 7 is about judging others, but specifically, I just want to. Actually, maybe I'll just read it, it's not that long. So, Matthew 7. Do not judge, or you will too be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the same measure you use, it will be used on you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck out of your brother's eye. That, for me, is really big because I very much I'm an observer. I like to watch a lot of things. I'm very observant with what people say, what people do. But me sitting back and observing, I could be judging, you know? And I do, and I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's people, like, when you're at work, when you're sitting on the beach, wherever you are, like, you are watching and you're judging. You're like, oh my gosh, did you see this? Whatever. Sometimes it's funny. But
sometimes you're like, okay, God, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry for that.
But yeah, and it goes into, like, it can go into gossiping, but the main purpose of what I'm trying to say here is that I very much can look at someone and be like, oh, you know, like, you struggle with this. But is it for me to point out? No.
It's my favorite verse.
Yeah.
The one that's never sinned, I say it in every episode, let the one that's never sinned cast the first stone. And nobody can touch it because we all fall short.
Yeah. And where I'm going with this specifically is not only that I am someone to judge and point out, because I do not do that. I know that I'm a good friend in the sense where I'm not going to be like, oh, you're really bad at this, and like belittle someone. It's not that I'm sitting there and pointing it out. It's more the fact that in my head I'm focusing on what they did wrong, that I cannot see what they do good, what they do right. And Stephen Farrick had a podcast, he posted a short sermon on this about a magnifying glass versus a mirror, and that's what this is: the speck of the dust in your eye versus the plank in mine. Like, I could sit here and be like, oh, like, you did this wrong, but instead, what about me? Why am I focusing on that? That's the plank in my eye, that I am not focusing on myself and what it's me and God. I'm more focusing about you and your problems. And that's never going to help our friendship or anyone's friendship with anyone if I'm just sitting here like, you did that wrong, blah, 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 blah. It should be like, God, why do I care about what's this? What is the underlying cause for this? It has nothing to do with her or him. It has to do with me.
Yep, exactly. And I think that going right off of that, it's literally projecting. It's because you don't want to deal with your own thing that you're dealing with, because you're like, nope, I'm perfect, I'm fine, but look at what they're doing. And it's like half of the time, like, when things are going on, it's never about the other person. It's always like projecting. So in a sense where it's like, oh, so-and-so was talking about me and they said this, and this. It's like, okay, because they don't want to focus on themselves. They don't want to focus on their problems that they're dealing with in themselves. It's never a you problem. They're projecting so they don't have to think about what's going on.
And that's a common phrase too. Everyone always says that, like, oh, don't worry what they say. It's because they have something going on.
They're dealing with. Exactly.
And it can be biblical in the sense of Matthew 7 of being like, you know, like, they have something that's going on, but instead of them figuring it out and really figuring out with God, like, shout out to Firm Foundation. Like, if I am not filling my cup with God's word, first off, I cannot only, like, we'll talk about this later this episode too, like, I can't help someone else, like my friend, but now I'm also just, like, hurting, and I'm putting that hurt on my friend, and it's not my friend's weight to carry, it's Jesus' weight to carry, and he will carry it every time. But he can't do that unless you bring it to him.
And going off of that, because I just watched that Stephen Furtick video where he was like, before, like, he's like, if you want to run to me and erupt every time, like, that's fine, I got it, like, I'll carry it, but why not pray to me first before it gets to that point? Why not come to me first and read the Bible and hear my word before you're like, this is happening, and this is all your fault? Because then guess what? I just did this. I'm putting blame on God. And it's not God's, like, fault at all. It's my own decisions, but he's like, and I'm here for you every time, and I got you, but, like, why not come to me? Give it to me before you get to this point.
And God says you reap what you sow.
Exactly.
So not all circumstances, we know there's some that don't like happen on your will, but sometimes you do put yourself in predicaments, and then we're like, oh, like, why would you let
Why
this
did
happen
you let
to
that
me?
happen?
And it's like,
like,
you put yourself there.
hello? Yeah.
And then God's like, I already knew this all was going to happen, but I'm trying to teach you a lesson.
Yeah.
A lesson, if you're willing to listen,
Yeah.
you will see.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that I have been working with, is like not looking magnifying glass on anyone, not even friends, just people in general, just not looking to what they're doing wrong, but turning it around and looking at a mirror and being like, why is this making me upset? What about me is this why is this bothering me? And if I go to God first in prayer, he will make it clear.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe there is something my friend or a family or the community did that was wrong, but now that I understand it in God's eyes, I can probably approach it better. And also, I'm not projecting, like you said, but I'm just concerned.
Yeah.
And then the conversation just goes better. And it's not fire versus fire. Like, it's different. It's a whole different thing when you take a step back and pray about it first versus just going to your friend. Because I talked about this last episode too. Like, you can't go to your friend with all your emotions because they probably can't handle their own emotions either. I said that last time.
Yep, exactly.
So, do you have another do for being there for one another?
I do actually. I do have another one. So, my next little verse to go off of that is Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times. They are there to help when trouble comes. And that can go right alongside, I think it's Matthew, but I'm not 100% sure. When two or more are gathered in their name, he is there. So I think that can just go with that. Like, when you're going through hard times, absolutely you want to be there 100% for your friend and do whatever you can for them. But like, I say that with boundaries, and there's always a fine line of what you're going through, because toxic friendships are very real. And don't put yourself in a situation of harm's way, mentally, physically, just boundaries, you know? But you absolutely want to do everything you can, and I can speak on and on about this in a don't aspect too, but for a loving and doing aspect, actions speak louder than words, and sometimes, like, words are amazing, and you can just be there to lend an ear and lend a shoulder, and it's just showing up for your friends and showing up biblically for your friends too, and being there biblically to give advice. And I think that sometimes we put that side away because we're like, okay, like, these are worldly people, like, I don't have to do that. But that's exactly where we should be pouring our energy, you know what I mean? And just giving Jesus to the lost, giving people like Jesus to the darkness, because Jesus is light, and he's going to just spark, you know, in your friend groups, in your families, like, just all around you, if you invite him into your friend group. So I think that's like a huge thing too. And just going back to it, at all times they are there to help when trouble comes, and it's just leaning on your community basically, and just being like, hey, how can I pray for you? How can I be there for you today? Like, hey, are you coming to church today? I missed you there, you know, like, just being like Jesus is being a good friend.
That's awesome.
So,
I love that.
Yeah.
And going off of that, I just got a thought of, because I'm the type of friend to not reach out to friends when I'm struggling. And shame on me for thinking that my friends can know what's going on if I don't tell them. So even though we say reach out to your community, some people like me might have trouble doing that because we're kind of like, I don't want to put it on them. I don't want to bother them. They have something else that's going on that's bigger than what I have going on, so it doesn't matter type of thing. And I just encourage you, because I struggle with this, just please do. Please still reach out to your friends. You know, pray about it with God and let God lead your friendships and your community through your prayer, because he will. And I struggle with this a lot, and I'm just so grateful to have friends that, you know, even though might not reach out every single time there's something wrong, it's more of the fact that I can come to them and I know that they will be there. Yeah. And that's what's important, because it is a hard walk to walk when you are not really outspoken. And I feel like that's the next thing we're going to be talking about like, sharing each other's burdens and stuff, where that's the second point. But there's a few more do's and don'ts about helping.
Yeah.
But it's really just being able to come to your community, not being afraid, because your friends come to you. So you should be able to go to your friends too.
Yeah.
I hope I said
And I
that
think
right.
it's like putting away like your pride, and like you're like, I don't want to. So it's putting away your pride, because you don't want to show people what you're going through and be embarrassed about what you're going through. But I guarantee you, they've been on that walk before. They've been on that path before, where they can be like, oh, actually, I know exactly how to do that, because this is what I just went through. And like, it opens so many doors. God always says, like, confide in your community. And not everybody, don't tell everybody, because again, there are some toxic friendships that'll be like, oh, did you hear so-and-so is this and this and this. A trusted, real biblical friend that'll be like, hey, I know what you're going through. This is what I went through last year or a couple of years ago. I know exactly how to do that. And this is what I'm going through. And then you lean on each other.
Yeah.
And that is how you do that. And again, one or two people, maybe don't go tell your whole community, because like,
it just goes around.
It just goes around, and then rumors, and then it's a whole thing. But one or two people.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, that's us.
Yeah, literally.
What she's saying is literally what we've been able to do for each other. Like, something me or you have struggled with, and then the other person's like, oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
Here's the verses that helped me through this.
Yeah.
That's biblical.
Here are the videos. Here's this. Here's that. I'll see you at church next week.
I'll pray for you. I'll have these people pray. Like, that is a biblical friendship.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to diminish friendships that are not biblical, but we're just trying to show you and shed light to those biblical friendships. Because I feel like they're not talked about. This is what it is. This is exciting.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's so fun, because you're like, wow, like I've never had a friendship like this before, where I'm like, oh my God, cool. Like, this is what that is, and like we could pray together, and like the way that like God will literally speak to us while we're praying, the same prayer, the same thought. It's insane.
Yep.
Like, it is so fun. It is so cool. So like, they're out there, like, pray about it, like,
and God will
bring them to you. Like, so
just the way God brought us
like
together.
Yeah. So they're out there. Keep praying.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Definitely. I have another don't.
I
feel like we're going
It's just gonna be the whole first one.
Another don't is basically, this is my, like, if there's things that I struggle with, this is like the top one.
Yeah.
Which is so bad. But we all have our flaws. We all have things that like just stump us and like we can't get past. And mine is expecting things from others. When I give, I expect something in return. And I don't know where I learned this from, but this is one of the biggest things that I struggle with, because I'm so much of a giver. I love to give. I love to be there for people. I love to give advice. I am so compassionate and kind and caring and yada, yada, yada. And it's not because, don't get this part wrong, it's not because I want something in return. It's just after I do all those things, I'm like, and I'm having a bad day, I'm like, wait a second. Why?
You're like, I'm giving too much.
Yeah. And like, where's those people for me in the same ways that I was there for them, kind of thing. And that's not biblical, unfortunately, for me, because like, it's just not, and it's not healthy either, because it's idolizing your friendships. And we talked about firm foundations last week, and this is one of my idols. I idolize friendships. I hold them so dear and close to my heart, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if I put my friends on a pedestal and people around me so high as God, then I'm going to get hurt, because they, in the sense, will let me down, and not because they're not good friends, but because I can't expect them to do every single thing that I do for them, because we're not the same person.
Yeah.
And that's my struggle. And there's a perfect verse that kind of talks about this too, because it is biblical. In Luke chapter 6, verse 35, it says, "But love your enemies, Do good to them and lean to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. And that for me is great because, in the sense, my friends are not enemies.
Yeah.
But it's just saying basically that you should give so graciously and so mercifully that you should not feel like they owe you anything.
My mom always said it to me all the time, where she was like, Rachel, you expect so much from people, and not everybody has your heart. So if you've been there, like, you understand. But again, your friends, they're not God.
They're not.
So He's the only one that you should put on a pedestal.
And I said this to my friend today. I was like, if we would not need God if our friends and our community and our family could fulfill what God can.
Yeah.
And none of them will ever do that. Only God can do that.
Yeah.
And you might be thinking, yeah, right, like, I'm happy in my relationship, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like, your partner, your friend, your family will always let you down in some certain way. And that is just the truth. And everyone has those times where, like, oh, actually, you're right. Like, I can think back on this time where we've been hurt. And not in the sense because our friends are bad, and don't let me get that, like, say that wrong, because I love my friends so much, and you guys do so much for me, and I am so beyond grateful. But the enemy gets in my head and makes me feel like it's not enough.
That's exactly because he knows that how good you guys are together, and he wants to tear friendships apart. That is what the enemy comes to do. Kill, steal, destroy. He wants to take everything that you have and ruin everything. So once that starts happening, once that thought comes into your head of, my friends suck, they're never there for me, this is awful, I do so much for them, know that that is the enemy, and he knows that there's something so good that God has on the other side, and he's trying to destroy your friendships.
And that's where you have to go to God's word and pray.
And
go to your friends too and be like, guys, I'm struggling with this. I need prayer because is this true or not? Like, kind of thing.
And be like, and Tina said it best, 0 to 0. Like, if you're feeling here, immediate. Hey, just communicating this with you. I just want to let you know this is how I'm feeling. Can we clear this up? And then that's done. And then it's over. And then half the time you're just overthinking so bad. And it's actually nothing. And same. So it's like, it's actually nothing. And then you're squared. And then that's it. The enemy fleed. Like, flew. Like, literally gone. Like, so yeah, like, it happens. It happens to everybody. So just know, like, hey, what's on the other side? Because he will always, always, always attack what you are meant to do.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true. And back to what I was saying, like, we would not need God if we were fulfilled elsewhere. And that's why it was a big wake-up call for me lately to just know that even though I love my friendships, my relationship, my family, I need God still, because they can never do what God can do for me. And so why do I ever think otherwise, and why do I not go to Him first? That's the question that we all struggle with as Christians, and we always will, because we're human.
Yep.
So I just wanted to throw that in there. Do you have any more do's?
I do not.
I have one more don't.
I do not.
The last don't that I have, it kind of goes off of what we were saying earlier about, you were saying being there for one another, knowing who you're surrounding yourself with, because who you surround yourself with, you become. Like, that's
the one that
that's
I was
a
talking
saying
about.
too, where they're like, you
Show
are
your friends, and you are who you hang around with. Yeah, exactly.
That's a common phrase people use, and guess what, guys? It's biblical. So, in Galatians 6, it says, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you may also be tempted. Carry each other's burdens in the way you will be fulfilled by the law of Christ. That has a lot in there, but I think the part where it says, there's three big things. So the first part, if your brother or sister, meaning like your friends or your community, is caught sinning, you should restore that person gently. You should be like, hey, I noticed this is kind of
a reoccurring thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind words.
Yep.
And I'm just noticing and I'm concerned about you and I just want to make sure things are good, yada, yada, yada. However you would like to fill in the blanks. I struggle with this one too. I come off very harsh sometimes. Not necessarily with friends, but with my relationship. We're so comfortable with each other. You can be so quick to speak sometimes.
I can't wait for that.
I know. And so it's just showing that God wants us to, not in the sense of shamefulness and blamefulness of being like you're sinning right now, like don't, but in a sense of like, hey, I noticed this is a problem and I want to be there for you if that's something that you want to, kind of thing.
Yep.
The second part, it says, watch yourselves, or you might also be tempted. That for me hits because I'm like, ooh, okay, we are all going to sin. So being aware, again, you don't want to magnify someone and be like, this is what you do wrong, but just being aware that we all can make mistakes and some people's mistakes are easily adaptable to you too, in a sense. Like, I don't have a good example at the top of my head, but just saying if someone is, I do. If someone swears a lot and you don't, but you surround yourself with someone who's swearing a lot, and swearing is a sin, you cannot not just be tempted, but you kind of just...
It just kind of goes into your vocabulary a little bit, and you're like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, everyone has their own walk, everyone has their own convictions. So me saying swearing is a sin, if you don't feel convicted by that right now, that's fine. Like Jesus and you, that's your relationship. I'm not putting this on anyone. I'm just saying in my convictions, last year, whatever, I had a problem with that. I had a very bad potty mouth. I've been doing really good. Very, very good.
Yeah.
But when I surround myself with family, people, acquaintances, friends, even the community, like sometimes people have, like, they swear. And,
it's always like the first thing you notice too, because you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's basically what it's saying is like watch yourself because you can easily be tempted too.
Yes.
And swearing is just one example, but there's so many. There's money, like desires, sexual desires, like there's so many things that just quickly come up on you.
Everything that you just thought of, that's it.
Exactly. Good. That's a good point.
Everything, whatever just popped in your head, that's it.
I like that. Yeah. So yeah, those are just some things that, you need to just watch yourself and be careful with because things can happen and we're easily tricked by the enemy, left and right.
All the time.
And it's not necessarily saying like because someone's sinning that you can't be around them. It's just knowing that you just have to, be cautious.
Yeah.
And you can
boundaries.
still love someone.
My favorite word.
Boundaries.
This season. Yeah. Boundaries. Yeah.
And you can love on someone and you don't need to point out their sin or anything and you don't need to be any different. It's just if you know that you have an own conviction with that, just don't be around it. Same thing if someone has an addiction. You won't be around people who are addicted to whatever because you are more likely to be tempted. And that's what this verse is trying to say.
And that's what and again, everybody sins. We're all sinners. We all fall short. But Jesus came to be a light and a healer in those areas. But again, like, he never sinned. He never fell short, and that is because of who he is.
And that's why we go to him.
We are human, so we need to be a little bit more careful, not saying cut off all of your worldly friends, because that's not what I'm saying at all. And I'm just saying be careful with who you surround yourself with all the time. So for a do that God literally just gave me because I saw it and then I opened right to it. So this is what he said, Proverbs 16:9. Sorry, I lied. 17:9. Whoever wants to show love forgives a wrong, but those who talk about it separate close friends.
Ooh.
Forgiveness is a do. Forgiveness is a very big do because if you're not forgiving people, again, there's that 0 to 0, and you're just like, I did this for them, I did this for them, I did this for them, and they're not doing anything for me, and then you're just kind of, every little thing is just really making you mad, and then you just erupt. That little friendship, that best friend that you had, little crack in that until it continues to erupt. So forgiveness is a huge part of your do. You want to forgive as Jesus forgave you. Again, keyword, boundaries, and respecting your boundaries, making sure that you're not getting hurt in physical or mental state. But forgiveness is a huge do.
Yeah, it is forgiveness to be able to not hold someone for something they did before. Yeah. Being actual, like, forgiveness is forgiving, meaning you are just not forgetting in some circumstances, but you are just being like, you know what, this did hurt, but I am willing to move past this so that our relationship could flourish, because if I'm holding on to this, it's not going to go away. I'm going to hold on to this for so long, and it's going to be in the back of my head all the time, and I'm not going to be able to let it go because of that one thing. Even though you apologized, even though, like, you changed, like, I still will remember. Like, that is not being forgivable. It's not. Forgiveness is more of the fact of, like, I know you did that, but I'm willing to let it go because you're willing to change and you're willing to whatever. If that's the circumstance.
If you're willing to change. Again, don't submit yourself to being walked over and whatever the circumstance is, because again, I've been there. I know what that's like, and it's not the best. And if you are leaving, whether it's a friendship, situationship, family member, whatever it is, if you're walking away from that being like, dude, I feel so drained right now. I don't know what's going on. Where to the point where you feel like you have to like refill your cup every single time you're with them. Maybe and that's God saying, hey, like, I gotta love you from afar kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm supporting you, but I can't be with you all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Something that I really do like is my cup filled after I leave a friend?
And you'll feel it. Like, if you're feeling depleted, or like, granted, like, we all have our days, like, you'll feel like, oh God, like, I don't know why I went to that, like, I'm just so tired, whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you feel like physically drained and you're like, dude, like, I didn't get anything from that hangout. Like, if I'm not feeling like, woo, like, I'm on cloud 9 hanging out with these people, I feel rejuvenated, I feel this, and you're just like, dude, my soul feels like drained. All they're doing is talking negatively and all of this stuff. And
if you're leaving
just
feeling like depressed, anxious, sad about yourself,
angry, like worthless, any of those,
probably not the
right friend for you. Probably, maybe, and I always say this because, like, if people are willing to grow with you and walk the walk with you and be like, yeah, actually, like, and again, if you talk to them about it, be like, hey, what's going on? Like, are you okay? Like, can I help you in some way? And they're like, yeah, I'm really going through this. Like, maybe I can go to therapy. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can. And, like, they're shooting ideas. Great. Fantastic. And willing to grow with you as a friend. Amazing. Or a relationship, whatever it is. But absolutely take that. But if they're not willing to grow and they're like, this is who I am.
Take it or leave
it. This is not who you are. This is not who I am. This is... No, I'm sorry, but if you're not willing to grow in 2024, then we gotta go. Like, I can't do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, you said it beautifully.
Thanks.
And God, being a Christian is so great because it's like God is always going to shine a light in some place that is dark in your heart. And be like, hey, like, this is a conviction that I want you to work on now.
Yep.
And it might be just you see it yourself, or it could be your friend that points it out in a nice, respectful way.
Oh, we're going to add this to the don't category. Don't text your friends when something's wrong with you, or when you're bothered by something, because, oh my God, like, it's just gonna be like, I just saw a video that had like 1 million or 2 million whatever likes, and it was like this guy was reading words, like, and how
with tones,
with different tones. So any little word that you say that you are like, hey, by the way, this like kind of bothered me the other day. No hard feelings.
They could be like,
hey, by the way, like, no, don't do it. I'm telling you, do not do this. If you need to talk to them, be like, hey, let's go grab food or something. By the way, I just wanted to talk to you. This kind of hurt my feelings, and go from there. And I swear you'll have a great friendship, and nobody will be mad. And that's it. we're done. Next category.
Yeah. So yeah, that is all on being there for one another. So the last thing that we just want to touch on is number 4, but this is really just to recap everything we talked about today. It's recognizing that to have a friendship, you need to know God and His love for you and what your relationship and friendship is like with God too. Because everything you maybe like in a friendship, enjoy about friendship, is what God created friendships to be like. And then when you get to align your friendship with God's word, it just flourishes and grows. So I have one verse that I really like. It's 1 John 4. So 1 John 4, let me just tell you, if you need to know like how much Jesus loves you, read the whole thing, because the whole thing is just so beautiful. In 1 John 4, verse 19, it says, "We love because He first loved us. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God, whom they have not seen. And He has given us this command: anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister." And that just really kind of full circle of this topic, love each other. If you're a Christian listening and you struggle with gossiping, you struggle with, belittling and all these things, like, if you love God, it is your duty to also love each other and be kind to one another. Be an example of Jesus, like we talked about in Firm Foundation. And I love the first part too, where God says, His word says, we love because He loved us first. Yeah. And it just paints this picture of like what Jesus did for us. So, this whole topic of loving each other is really how can we be like Jesus in the terms of a friendship, because friendship is love. And if you need to know what love is, 1 Corinthians 13, 1 John 4, it tells you exactly what love is. At the end of the day, friendship is about loving each other. Yeah. And if you don't have love for someone, that is a you thing that you have to work with yourself and with God. And then also let your friends in, like we said, and just say, hey, like, I don't know how to do this. Can I have help? Yeah. And so at the end of the day, just try your best to love each other. Love your friends, love your enemies, love your community, love your family, no matter what.
Love.
It is. It always goes back to love. That's what Jesus says.
He is love.
And He says that everything, all His commandments, all His teachings, it comes back to love.
Yeah.
So it's a big topic for sure, but we just wanted to shed. I mean, we could have talked about so many things.
So much more deeper into this, but there was.
It's just the surface level of what friendships is and what love is, and I'm sure we might do a part 2.
Because this is heavy. Yeah. This is big, and I feel like there's just so many like negative things. We just wanted to come and shed a little bit of light on friendships and relationships and going about it. But yeah. So that's it. That's a wrap. Until next time. But thank you guys so much for watching. We hope that you loved this video. We love you guys, and we hope to see you next time
for such a time